Hello, everyone. This is Quadcast, the podcast where four political spectrums debate and have fun together. Pretty sure no one remembers this. Like, we had a few viewers last time we started this podcast, but pretty sure we only have new viewers. But for the old viewers, well, this is season 2. Welcome back.
I have a question already.
Already.
Can I bully you on camera?
No.
Okay, what do you mean, no bullying? That's crazy. That's it. It's done.
Okay, this is my podcast. First rule. This is my podcast.
Oh, that's how it's gonna go.
I'm gonna introduce myself first of all.
As
very nice.
As expected of the authoritarians.
My name's Cavolo. I represent the authoritarian left quadrant of the political compass. And let's go around and say our names. Also, my pronouns are he, him. Let's go. Lina, you're next.
Hello, I'm Lina. I represent the libertarian left. You can literally call me anything. I don't give a shit.
Right.
Hi, my name's Tim. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Libertarian Right.
My name is Mark, and I'm the new auth-right of the podcast. Chosen by people, of course.
Of course. Well, thanks everyone. I think my model has a bit of a problem. Alright. Never mind. So, now that we all introduced ourselves, I'm gonna explain how the podcast is gonna work. Basically, my model is gone. No, never mind. Okay, basically, we're gonna introduce our ideologies in these first 2 episodes, and on the rest of the episodes, we'll be debating news and stuff that comes up. We're all from different countries, but all within the same time zone, so I was thinking it would be nice to discuss news that are local or national. But we will discuss also global news as they come up. But now let's hit it with the introductions. Please, Tim, introduce your ideology from the libertarian right quadrant.
Thank you very much. So, libertarianism is, I think, the best ideology to get behind when it comes to economics. And economics is the most important issue in life. It's the study of how to solve the major problem we humans face on this planet, which is called scarcity. This is the problem which economists try to solve, and different economic systems propose different solutions to the problem of scarcity, right? Things are scarce. The natural state of man is scared, naked, hungry, scared of being eaten by lions, right? That's the natural state of man. But that's not us today. We've conquered scarcity by means of trade, for example. And that's why economists try to study this phenomena of people trading with each other. Capitalists believe that scarcity can be managed best when the means of production are in private hands. This is opposed to being in public hands or state hands. From this follows the libertarian property ethic. From this follows the non-aggression principle. And from this, you get anarcho-capitalism. Because if you think it all through, you have the non-aggression principle and you have a society based on respecting the non-aggression principle, then you get anarcho-capitalism. I should explain the non-aggression principle. That's the idea of respecting each other's right to your own body and your own property, which follows from owning your own body. So, at the start of this argument is scarcity, which I think we can all agree on. Things are scarce. But then the next assumptions capitalists make would be that resources can be allocated the best when the mode of production is private. I want to prove this. So why is the private resource allocation superior to any other form of resource allocation, like planned economies? This is because of prices. Prices are very useful. They tell us about how scarce a resource is. They reward people who manage to conquer the scarcity by producing these things, which cost a lot. And they punish people who use scarce resources too much. And this is why capitalist economies have the best resource allocation. Really, the problem with socialism is the economic calculation problem, which inversely, when you don't have prices, you can't really calculate how much to use of a certain resource. This all sounds very abstract, but it has real-world consequences. Just think about how, and this is a famous example in economics, how to produce a pencil. Nobody knows how to produce a pencil. Nobody knows how many trees need to be cut down in what part of the rainforest, in which country, to be transported by what means to a factory located where, and how many boats should be in the wheels of the truck carrying the wood. Then nobody knows this. You need to have people trade with each other and figure it out by using prices as a gauge of how scarce resources are. Socialists really can just imitate the designs made up by capitalist economies. And so they try to have efficiency that way, but it always failed. And this has real-world consequences. I mean, look at East Germany versus West Germany, North versus South Korea, even though North Korea got a very good start and they had a lot of natural resources in the ground. They couldn't work with them because nobody knew how many coal workers should be working, how many shifts in which part of the country at what time. Nobody knows this. You need to have people figure it out by means of trade. And trade is always consensual, which is part of the ethical argument behind, undergirding capitalism, really. So, having talked about the empirical and the rational arguments for capitalism, I want to give a quick overview of libertarian policy proposals, which me, as a libertarian, I would be very fond of. Now, I think, just a disclaimer beforehand, that libertarian politics is an oxymoron, because politics will always be the study of how to govern over people, and libertarianism is anti-government. And so, really, thinking about it now, I mean, we're talking about political compass, right? There's two quadrants on the right, and there's two quadrants on the left, and so this isn't ideal for explaining this concept of how politics is always left, because we're talking like there's actually different flavors of leftism and different flavors of rightism. And that's fine for the time being, but just consider this. When you pass some kind of legislation, you're always regulating the free trade between individuals, which is always going to be some form of socialism. I mean, that's really the idea behind socialism, the public ownership of the means of production. And so that's more or less what the state says they have when they try to regulate means of production, right? They're saying, we have ownership over this, we can do this to you. Anyways, my policy proposals are, very standard. I'm sure you've heard one or another. There's the abolition of the central bank, which libertarians really like, because central bank currency is a means of controlling people. You can print it, you can fund wars with it. It's terrible. I think Henry Ford once said that if people knew how the banking system worked, there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning, and I believe it. Then there's rolling back regulations on trade between free individuals. That's concerning every trade, whether it's drugs, whether it's abortions, whether it's really the key to solving most issues in today's politics, or the answer that libertarians will give. Just remove the regulations. Then there's dismantling the state education and media system. Now, that's something that Europeans, we're all Europeans here, know a lot about. Many of us live in countries which have state education and state media. And I think it's something, well, so right-wing authoritarians, they might talk about that, they're indoctrinating our kids. Well, yeah, what else are they going to do? They are in control of the media and the education. So the real answer shouldn't be, oh, we're going to make the kids conservative in conservative state schools. No, the answer should be there should be no state schooling and no state media. So that's what libertarians are arguing for. Then there's the total abolition of the social state. I don't think I need to go back into that. I mean, libertarians don't like the social state because it's really just distributionism, redistributionism from some group of people to some other group of people. And you don't owe your body or your money or anything your body creates to anybody else. Then there's the enabling of easy legal immigration, because immigrations, I mean, really these nations on the map, they're fictitious borders. These are just lines. This is all land. It belongs to someone. Sometimes that someone is a state pretending to own it, but I mean, really, states can't. I mean, you can't have something like public property. It's an oxymoron, because property always implies that you have control over it, and the democratic vote isn't a means of controlling anything. So I'm in favor of people being allowed to cross across the map freely, and I think it should be legal, and so I'm for legal immigration. Of course, going along with the abolition of the social state, this would not mean that much more immigration than we have today, because a lot of the reasons for immigration, especially in Europe today, are because of social states, like my country. Then there's selling of state assets, which would be land and stuff, maybe giving that money back to the people. How about that? And lastly, there's downsizing government services in every regard, whether it's firemen, streets, so on and so on. I think all of these things can be privatized and would be offered at a better rate and offered at a much higher quality. I think there's reason to believe that because of how capitalist economies have transformed many parts of the world into much wealthier regions than they were before. I think a look at China and India is going to do people very good. And I think that applies to everything. There's the question about whether the state should work security from outside and within, so police and military, and the courts. So some people say those are the only legitimate purposes of the state. And I agree. And I have sympathies on both sides of the argument. Anarcho-capitalists wouldn't say that the state should provide security because they think it's too dangerous. And more minarchist libertarians or objectivists would argue for a minimal state. This talk about libertarian politics is very much just talk. This is never going to happen. We will never have a libertarian chancellor in Deutschland, and we will never have a libertarian leader, I think, in Europe for a long time. Even if we did, just look to Argentina. They have an anarcho-capitalist as a head of state. Well, he doesn't have a parliamentary majority. He tries his best and he can't get the government to size down because libertarian politics is an oxymoron. That's what I was saying at the start, and it shows. So libertarians have other solutions. One of them are free private cities. So people moving to some spot and agreeing to form a government by voluntary contract, which is different from a government which asserts itself onto you. Then there's extreme federalism. So think of the Free State Project, for example. Few crazy Americans, they founded like this organization. They decided on a state in the United States to move to and make it libertarian by means of voting and just secede from the union. And they've got like 12,000 people to move. So it's not going too bad. And the third idea would be agorism. Agorism, or agorism, as some like to say, is the idea of non-cooperation with the state. Means of agor have something in common. We hate the government. We think that taxation is theft, that enlistment is slavery, We think it's right to end the Fed and to become...
Sorry
Thank
to
you.
interrupt you. I think the last part got lost because my connection stopped for a second.
Oh, crap.
I'm gonna solve the issue real quick. We're back online, I think. I'm gonna also fix my model. Okay. Okay.
Well, allow me to finish on this note.
Yes, go on.
Taxation is theft, enlistment is slavery, become ungovernable. Thank you.
Well, I would applaud you if it wasn't for the fact that I disagree with everything that you've just said.
Look, I only disagree with half of it.
Of course, because you're a libertarian.
I say yay to end the Fed, everything else. And I say yay to end the Fed on, I think, exactly opposite reasons as you say end the Fed. So, because there is a pretty big thing with the private companies at the Fed in the Federal Reserve, and like 70% of the Federal Reserve is run by private companies and by private faces. So it's.
But irrelevant. The institution of the central bank is the problem. It's the idea of some organization having the power to print currency. It's everything that follows from this, the kinds of contracts they have going on, and sure, they give the money to other banks, and those banks actually loan it out. That doesn't matter. We have an organization asserting themselves to be the lender of last resort, and they can just counterfeit currency. That's my problem with the central bank.
But they do even more than that. The recessions and the inflation and deflation, they are solely responsible for that. Yeah. And because inflation and deflation, it basically is not really that of a real concept in the economic system as like with the Federal Reserve. Because again, as you said, they have a power to print the money. They also have the power to say, yo, we want this to go up and this to go down, and they just go and make it happen. I would see it is more of a like, it should be oriented, like the people who run it are private faces that do it mostly for their own gain or for their company's gain, rather than doing for at least national gain, right? Even though I, again, disagree that it's going to even help the national gain, but still.
Right.
It's monopoly.
This is called the Austrian business cycle theory. I like that you subscribe to that theory. Any other questions?
Can I dunk on the auth-right for a bit for spouting national gain because nations are fictional?
Nations are fictional.
Can I just ask
Nations are fictional.
I mean, yeah, to a certain extent.
Well, nation, what nation truly is. Nation is the highest organism. So like if we have an animal, we have a man, right? And the culture man, and then we have the high nation, right? The nation is an organism it has its own cycles. Yeah, nations have they are rising, they're falling, they are in stagnations. They're becoming senile, as we're seeing right now. They're becoming very senile, right? And what is happening truly is that there's right now, as I would say, a dehumanization of man and a dehumanization of an individual to bring it on the same level as an animal, using Darwinian theories.
Maybe you should keep that for your introduction.
That is so true. That is so true.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, please. So, I was gonna ask you to elaborate a bit more on your framework, like, because you equate socialism to authoritarianism.
Yes,
like you literally said that state must be socialist because that's your definition of socialism. Can you elaborate more on that?
I didn't quite explain that as well as I could, so I'd be glad to. Really, when you when you talk about socialism, there's different definitions because you guys lie all the time to justify your horrendous beliefs.
Yeah, sure.
But throughout all of history, socialists have agreed that there's some form of public ownership of the means of production. Now, the public can mean many things. Corporations are public because they're owned by many people, like stockholders. But you can also have state assets, which are public, especially, I mean, in a democracy, there's no question about it because, well, it's like having stock in something, only you can't sell it, right? You can't sell your citizenship, but you can vote like a stockholder. And so really, if property works like this, right, I should say, just that the state is certain.
Wait, I'm
Property
sorry.
does this when you
I
buy it.
am having connection troubles again.
Yeah, I was meandering anyway. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back now, and I was hoping I wouldn't have connection problems. I didn't have connection problems for a whole hour before this stream, and now that I'm streaming, the Wi-Fi just goes on and off for some reason.
We'll be fine. I'll promise to make this short.
Okay, if you could re-explain the whole thing.
Yes, politics works by force. You force people to accept your opinions and to act on them. This is what makes government do government stuff. It's force. Whereas private actors have to work consensually and via trade. That's what trade's called. Every trade is consensual by definition because both people in the moment which they trade the products or services agree on the trade. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. And that's what a contract is. States don't work on contracts. They work on force. This is why every state measure, every leftist call to action always has to include force. This is authoritarian. This is why in my model, which I think is useful when talking about economics, I'll admit that the compass can help us discuss social issues, but really there's just one axis when it comes to economics. It's always no force or force.
Well, I have some issues with that framework, but I think I'm gonna talk about it more in my introduction. So if anyone has other questions for Tim, you should ask now before I start rambling.
I'm just gonna say again, I agree with half of it. I of course think that the state uses force. That's how it works. It's a monopoly on violence. That's how it works. I just also think corporations, the state is currently propping up corporations, which I think are bad. So it's using force to prop up the corporations, but I also think it uses force to prop up private property.
That's right. Yeah. I'll be very excited to talk more with you.
Yeah, next time I'll prepare a good speech.
All right. Go ahead.
How would the courts work under capitalism and anarchism?
That's a good question.
Well, yeah. So private arbitration is already something that's a thing. So companies will hire private arbitration companies, which are like private courts, to discuss disputes because there's always disputes when you have contracts, right? Oh, you didn't specify this one thing. And so they don't go to the state. Some go to private arbitration companies because they're quicker and they usually deliver more fair judgment. This works in such a way as the two companies, they meet in a room, they have a list of companies which do arbitration, and they each cross out one company on the list and take turns, right? So the company that's left there is the one they both most agree with to take as an arbitrator. And each of the arbitration companies has an incentive to be as fair as they can as to be chosen on these lists. I think this would work for criminal charges because you usually have a victim who will want restitution, or a victim's family, or an insurance agency which will want restitution from the suspect.
All right, any
Okay.
other question? No? Okay, so it's my turn to speak now.
Go ahead.
I want to start by defining the framework in which I view my ideology, because it's totally different from Tim's framework. He thinks there's just one axis where authoritarianism equals socialism and libertarianism equals capitalism. Well, I beg to differ. I think frameworks, first of all, are just a way for us humans to, put things into context or perspective, right? Like to understand things better. And I think the model I like the most, the model that's most useful to understand politics, is a framework with 3 axes. One for the government's power, so how big you want your government, how authoritarian you want your government, so the authoritarian libertarian axis. The second one, the economic axis, which can range from socialism to capitalism. And the last one is social issues, like, progressivism versus conservatism. So, rights, in a word. So all the minorities' rights and stuff like that. And why do I think these 3 axes are like separate and not, collide with one another? The reason is, I think you can have socialism, and this is gonna surprise Tim. I think you can have socialism without an authoritarian government, because yes, socialism is collective ownership of the means of production. But that can happen without the government. I mean, if you're in a commune, for example, where the whole population owns the means of production, that's basically libertarian communism, because there's no state. Like, the whole population owns the stuff all together. There is no body of few people owning the whole, whole nation, piece of land.
They would have to agree by contract, which is only possible in libertarian framework.
Yes. But it doesn't have to be a capitalistic framework. Libertarian doesn't have to equate with capitalism, because in capitalism, according to Marx, which is, the
Worst liar in
center...
history. Yep.
What?
Absolutely.
I'm
Marx
sorry,
was the
did
liar.
I interrupt
The devil
you
incarnate.
while you were...
The devil incarnate.
You're correct.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay,
My bad.
so according to Marx, who's like the center of socialist philosophy, right?
May I comment on that?
Later.
Marx. Get out.
Later. We have disagreements, yes, in the left. Marx, for some, is a bit outdated, which is true. But, I mean, the basics, I think he has the basics right. According to Marx, capitalism is defined by having the capitalist class be the owner of the means of production. So private property, right? There's only one person privately owning the whole property. And that doesn't have to correlate with the libertarianism. Because if you think about it, like, capitalism only dictates how many people own a certain thing, and also which class of people owns a certain thing. So if you have only one owner that owns basically the whole company, the workers and stuff, that's a capitalist economic system. So you can have a libertarian, setting with communism, where the workers are the ones owning the property. So it's not longer private, but it's not authoritarian either, because there's no state. I think this is a very important difference for my framework. And also, yeah, I think I'm done explaining that. I think that's enough. So, as for my ideology, I am extremely socialist. I want all companies to be co-ops, and I don't want to allow capitalism in any way. And I'm also slightly authoritarian. What I mean by that, I mean I want a democracy. So I don't want Stalinism, where there's a dictatorship of Stalin, of one person. I want democracy, like the kind of democracy we have nowadays. I'm fine with that. Ideally, I want a technocracy, but I know that's a bit far-fetched. So to keep things real, I'm fine with a democracy. The thing is, in contrast with the anarchists here, Tim and Lina, that seems a bit too authoritarian. So yeah, that's why I don't identify myself as libertarian. But yeah, I want a democracy on the authoritarian axis. I want communism on the economics axis, and I want progressivism on the social aspect rights axis. I think a good leftist has to have in mind people's rights. Like there has to be a system that guarantees that everyone's rights are respected. And that's why I don't believe in anarchy, because I think that with anarchy there is no system in place that can guarantee that people's rights are respected. The thing about the contract that Tim was saying, I don't think, if there is no monopoly on violence, if there is no state, I don't think anyone will be, incentivized to not break the contract simply. Like, people break the contract all the time. So what guarantees that in an anarchist state the contract won't be broken? There's nothing to guarantee that. That's why I want a state. And what else is there to say? Thinking. Also, I noticed my sprite stopped moving. I'll have to restart it. Give me a minute.
Oh, that was fun. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
I want to bully him on his understanding of socialism.
Yeah. Also, what is socialism here? I can see communism. I can see communism in the economic system. I understand that socialism and communism are mutually exclusive. So it's, if anything, it's just communalism. Like, it's just democratic
I will explain what I think is the difference between socialism and communism. Communism, I think, I want to say it's the Marxist understanding that communism must be free of a state. Like, it has to be like libertarian on all axes. Basically, it has to be communist in the economic axis, and it has to be libertarian with no state.
May I comment?
Yeah, you can comment.
Marx advocated for central banking, so
yeah, I know, that's bad. I mean, that's bad from a libertarian point of view. I don't know how to feel about central banking, but
That's the only thing I don't like about libertarianism. That's interesting. Can't be the only thing.
I want to say that communism is pretty libertarian, whereas socialism, I think I'll use that term to define whatever fits the economic left axis. So like the left quadrants, basically. That is all socialism. And I will distinguish between authoritarian socialism, where there is a state, and libertarian socialism, which would be basically communism. So yeah, anarchist.
So did you actually? Well, okay, I understand. You think communism will be anarchist. Oh, all right. May I ask, why do you think that communism is anarchism?
Well, as I said before, anarchism doesn't have to be capitalistic. So, of course, I wouldn't describe the USSR as communist because it's highly authoritarian. So, like, it's not the mainstream definition of communism. It's not the way people use the word communism. I think communism is quite libertarian because of hierarchies. Like, communism is anti-hierarchies. And you see, when a state is very authoritarian, that's a form of hierarchy, because there's, a head of state and, all the people below that. Yeah, that's the way Lina explained it to me, by the way. So yeah, since communism is anti-hierarchy, it has to be libertarian, it has to be left economically, because, instead of having the hierarchy of one capitalist owning the means of production, you have all the workers owning the means of production together. And it has to be socially progressive, because, racism is hierarchic, because you have, white people being more important than brown people and stuff like that, and not
Racism works
minorities.
in all kinds of ways. It's different in every part of the world.
Yeah.
It
Being in
really
hierarchy,
depends.
that's an entirely different argument I'd love to get into. There's a lot here to work. But I'm interested in your perspective on whether this is a private definition between you and Lina, or whether this is actually a public definition that's been used in history, because I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. Marx once wrote something like the state will wither away, and it was a promise. It did not happen. It never happened in any socialist country in the world. It never happened. The state always grew and oppressed the people more, because they were lying. They were liars, and they told you guys that the state would wither away, and it didn't happen.
Yeah,
I would say what even worse with the communist states is that what they end up turning into is if we're going out of a spiritual sense, right? The spirit of the revolution is getting exchanged by what exactly? Spirit of stagnating, rotting bureaucracy. It is fifth community of the CPL, and it just goes on and on and on, right?
Okay.
And it is a big problem with all of the states.
I'm gonna reply to these questions. I don't know if it's used historically. That's why I'm, setting a definition. I think Lina can.
I wanted to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
So the hierarchy one is actually a bit more of the anarchist interpretation. Like the slightly historical. It's also my own interpretation of it, and from other anarchists I've talked to, like modern anarchists, because we need to adapt all theory. All theory saw the world from those eyes. The world has adapted in ways that people couldn't have predicted. Marx predicted some things, but didn't predict some others. Like,
yeah, that's part of it.
To show a meme, when the Suez Canal got blocked, Marx actually said that if one channel gets blocked, the whole world economy will suffer.
Wrong again.
So, like, yeah, he predicted that something can happen and that it'll have an effect. He just didn't predict the extent.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. That's why, I think Marx should be read with a modern, framework. So I'm not sure that this definition has been used historically, maybe not, but we should use modern definitions. And about the thing about the state withering away, yeah, I agree. The state never withers away. That's why I'm not an anarchist. I don't believe in anarchy. I don't think anarchy can sustain itself. Well, libertarians do believe in anarchy, but, I think in order to make an anarchist society, you'd have to build it like from it being anarchist in the first place. You can't like start from it being statist and then transition to it being anarchist. I don't think that's possible because the state tends to stay, it has some kind of inertia to it. So I agree on that.
And indoctrinate the entire population, so you create the new socialist man, which would work together in harmony. And I mean, that's what they tried.
Yeah.
They tried.
I guess.
They failed.
The problem with creating the new socialist man is that new socialist man is a man with basically zero. They start out with zero, and then they thought, oh, we're gonna build it all up. And guess what happened? 1991. That's what happened.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
may I add about the 1991 comment, because
Sure.
this one really pisses me off. Even though I hate the economy of the Soviet Union a lot, I do. I hate bureaucratism, that kind of bureaucracy. The main reason for the fall of the Soviet Union was nationalism in the Republic members.
You know why? Because of the Perestroika movement. Because the big dudes from the old guard said, "Oh, look at the Coca-Cola drinking West. We need to do the same thing. Then people will love us." And guess what happened? First things, the pre-Baltics go out and say, "Oh, we hate Soviet Union. Get out of here."
There was also the fact that a copy of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact secret protocol was discovered and published. So everyone was kind of mad at that.
I mean,
Right, yeah. I have another question for Cav.
yes.
I would like to know your view on the mode of production, because you didn't talk too much about, economics in the way I did.
Sure.
So I was interested in whether you believe that the private mode of production or the public mode of production would be better.
Okay, so it has been confirmed by studies that co-ops, which are companies where the workers own the means of production, are far more resilient than private properties, and they handle economic crashes better, and they are reasonably efficient, like if not more efficient than private mode of ownership. So on the economic perspective, I think that co-ops would solve a lot of problems. Like the workers have the rights to decide what to do with the company. And not only that, but there's not gonna be any monopoly. Because, okay, I'm gonna rephrase that. It's not like there's not gonna be any monopoly, because I think, monopolies tend to form anyway, but it will reduce drastically the amount of monopolies we have. I don't think that all monopolies are bad, because the monopoly on violence that the state has, I think that's good because it's necessary to guarantee the rights of the population. But economic monopolies of private companies, those are really, really bad, because it destroys, competitiveness.
Prices, for example, yeah, they can ask for a monopoly price, which exploits the consumer.
Also, it's not just bad for the, market. It's bad for politics, because then those monopolies can, bribe the government to do whatever they want. Like, for example, car manufacturers have been lobbying the government for many, many years to, build cities that are reliant on cars. So, the kind of suburbs that America has and stuff like that.
Yeah, monopoly and lobbying is a huge problem. So I have to ask you, if you are against lobbying and you are against monopolies, why are you for a huge monopoly, which is the socialist state, to be influenced by all these forces, whether it be democratic or, by lobbying? corporations. That's why I see a danger in a strong state, because it can be influenced, it can be wielded as a useful tool for people to get richer, and it is being well, that's what's happening in the world today.
Well, you see, the thing is, in an ideal, like socialist, properly leftist state, there's no concept, like there's no currency, like, no, I mean, I'm explaining this badly. It's a moneyless society. Like, the goal is a moneyless society. So
it's gonna take away the money.
Yeah, there is basically no way to lobby the government in a moneyless society. But that's idealistically. In the real world, I think socialism is the closest we can get to that. Like, I think logically, the more companies we have, like the less monopolies we have, the more influences we have, the less they can influence the government. Because when you have a monopoly, like the monopoly on cars, that's the only entity that can influence the government. The government will take that influence and act accordingly. But if we have a lot of different influences, there is no one influence that can directly impact the government in the same way. Like, it's not like the government is gonna choose whatever influence from the 100,000 that there are. I think it makes things more fair.
I understand. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome. So we have like 10 minutes left. If you have any more questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Yes.
Okay, so no bribes, right? But how will the deputies of the communal committee look at me when I roll up on my new truck with 15 tons of bread on it, and they haven't eaten for like 15 years now? And then I say, gentlemen,
Wait,
we know how it goes.
wait, I
And the
don't get
second,
it. Can you rephrase your question?
I fucking love this hypothetical.
I love this guy.
I mean, I genuinely don't get
because
it.
currency is not the only way you can bribe people with.
Yeah, of course.
There is much more other ways that you can bribe people
the
with.
goal of socialism is to reduce the ways in which you can bribe the government, I think.
No, it's not. It's not, though. It's the goal of socialism is to make the means of production public, and I'm really
that's too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, that's a nice idea. I guess I'm sliding into another question here, but seriously, how are we going to get the people to give up their private property?
You just kill them all.
You don't
Yeah.
have to give up your private property. Okay. I think you have misunderstood me, because, if you own a house, it's not like you're gonna give your house to the government. It's more like the government has to supply the property, since it's government, like if you have for example, a homeless crisis, the government should take it upon itself to build more houses to give to people.
That's a nice idea in theory, but the problem is that government doesn't produce anything. It's always people producing things, building roads, building skyscrapers.
But who decides?
And the government is going to have to force people to work on behalf of bureaucrats. And I don't see what's socially acceptable about that.
I mean, okay, you're right, people produce things, but the government decides what has to be produced. So instead of people producing, like, I don't know, stuff for the rich, like, 30 stories mentioned for one person, the government can decide, no, we pool those resources to build more houses for the common people. And that's gonna benefit society as a whole, because, some things are needed for the whole society.
No, it's just going to take resources which would be placed here, allocated to this thing, and going to put them somewhere else. And you are telling me that government bureaucrats, which don't spend their own money, they spend other people's money, and they don't spend it on themselves, they spend it on other people, are going to be better at allocating resources than people who are spending their own money for themselves. I ask you, if you go out with your mother's purse to buy a gift for a friend, are you going to make a better choice than when you go out with your own your own money, right, and buy a gift for yourself? Which decision is going to be better? Which decision is going to produce the best gift?
Well,
I'm very sure it's going to be the latter one.
The thing is
so
that
that's the problem
the
with
government...
public education. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, I understand your analogy, but the thing is the government is elected by the people, so the people are gonna elect somebody who represents their interests, which means
objection.
Very nice.
Which means my ideology that
please go ahead.
Okay.
Can I please finish my train?
Yeah, you can finish that, and I'll go on.
Okay. It would be more like I go out with my mother's purse to buy a gift for a friend, but the friend told me exactly what he wants, right?
The democratic process isn't effective at deciding on what millions of people want. That's ineffective. It's always going to be the majority will, and the minority will be crushed and oppressed by the majority.
Yeah, but what's better, having like one person decide for the whole population, or
if the whole population are retards, yeah, and then we have one person who actually knows what to do, maybe we should let that one person do what needs to be done.
Oh, that's
perhaps, maybe.
But Alin,
I think the whole point is we're building on here is that somehow populations know what's best for them, which is quite not true, because every single time, if you look at the elections, the person to the party comes out and says, we're gonna make this country beautiful again, and everyone goes, yeah, let's do that, let's speak right now. And then we have a recession and everyone goes, oh no, how did that happen? I put a red cross on this candidate. It said everything would be great. Why is now he has a villa and I have nothing?
All right.
Okay, can I hear Lina's point?
My objection is that you don't have the elected officials actually running stuff directly. You have a mass of bureaucrats who are unelected, who are subject to nobody but not even the purse of the state. They just control the money, and that's how it works. I have seen it in person. I have worked with some local policy. They do some bureaucratic bullshit, and then they give some corrupt company some money, and then that corrupt company doesn't finish on time, so they have to give it more money and extend the term, and that's how stuff really works with governments and doing it with that.
I guess I concede to that point. I guess I'm like I'm not attached to bureaucracy. Like, if there's less bureaucracy, I guess that's better. But I still think the state is necessary. Like, I know democracy favors a majority versus a minority, but I think it's a necessary compromise because the other options are worse. Like, anarchy is worse at protecting rights, and dictatorship is worse because there's too much power concentrated in the hands of one person. Yeah, so...
Centrist? I'm kidding.
I guess I'm a bit of a centrist, but I really want, like, socialism. I really want co-ops and stuff like that.
And democracy.
And democracy, yes.
Which is important. I don't like democracy.
I know you all don't like democracy. I know I'm basically fighting 3 people over democracy. I know I'm very.
What do you mean? I am pro-democracy until the end.
What do you mean? You've just said that.
Democracy of the spirit. I
am.
mean.
You've just said
The
that
gods
population is
choose the
retarded,
one.
basically.
Okay,
The ancient gods choose the one who rules.
Good. I honestly, I think Mark might be pretty much as good as Dude was in the last season.
Yeah.
I love you guys. This is going to be great.
It's going to be absolutely beautiful. It's only the start.
Yeah. I also wonder how much I should LARP, because I LARPed with the centrist yelling earlier, or should I call you statist?
I guess you can call me statist, yeah.
I have an entire. I'm starting to have a PDF document with just how to call an opposite political spectrum, and let's just say it's filling up.
Of course you do. I mean, that's basically one of the traits of being authoritarian, right? Just knowing what to call the opposition, like list of insults.
Absolutely, it's populism though. Like everyone does that, and I don't think it's a shame to do that. You know.
Well, I think it's time for our closing statements.
Yeah.
All right.
Who wants to go first?
I'm going to go first. This has been interesting. I still think we need to talk more about economics, because I think that social freedoms, you talk about freedom, protecting freedom is important to you. And I don't think socialism is any way to conserve freedom. I haven't been convinced by your arguments, and I still have major doubts about this idea that we can have social freedoms separate from economic freedoms. Because if you don't have one, in my view, you don't have the other. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say you failed to convince me with all your points, but I think that's fine. I mean, the whole point of this podcast wasn't to try to convince the other quadrant. I think I'm gonna use my closing statement to talk about the purpose of this podcast. I like this idea because I want to show different ends of the political spectrum to an audience and show that it is possible to talk, debate in a respectful manner, while also not assuming that the goal is to convince the opponent. The goal is to convince the audience. Like, the audience is gonna watch this and think, I like this perspective more, etc. But yeah, I wanna show that different sides of the spectrum are very different. There can be a dialogue, but it doesn't necessarily has to result in a compromise or convincing the opponent or stuff like that. In fact, there's a reason why we vote for different parties. I don't expect the leftist party to agree with stuff that the right party proposes and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to restart this podcast. And also, I still think socialism is the best way. I think that there are valid points from other quadrants, but I'm pretty sure that mine is the best ideology. Okay, next up, who wants to go?
Well, all of us goes. Okay, I can go next up. Very nice starting, I would say. Contrary to what Tim thinks, or Tom. Tim or Tom?
It's Tim.
Tim, okay, thank you. Contrary to Tim thinks, I think we need more ideology, more social, less econ, because I get enough econ in my econ class. But again, nobody convinced me. If anything, I'm even more strong in my beliefs. But I think honestly, be here because yeah. It would be fun, honestly, because again, I would say people screaming at each other, disagreeing, but still having a good time is better than all of us one person talks for like an hour and everyone will go, yeah. That's exactly how
Mark,
it is.
I'm
Absolutely.
sorry,
Absolutely.
my connection disconnected again.
Fair enough.
But I got like the last sentence, like the part about
Okay.
disagreeing,
That's good.
but respectfully.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the main point.
That's the
All
main
right.
point, I guess. Lina?
All right. The point about the joke about the flags. I would say I'd get a Catalonian flag, but I don't want to go into the non-hierarchical labor camps.
Okay.
Catalonia's gay.
Yeah. But Catalonia, I mean like the 1930s one in the Spanish Civil War, not the modern one, obviously.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which had labor camps.
I don't know much about
anyway,
history, honestly.
next week, I will really have to write a good essay because I want to be on par with everyone. I'm also gonna have to formalize the mess of things in my head because it makes sense to me, but I have to like actually put it into words to people. So stay tuned for that. And I hope we can all have fun discussing things. And even if we disagree, I think we can have some interesting discussion, especially on the libertarian side, because we stem from similar, very, very similar points, but we end up with different conclusions. Oh, and Cavolo.
Yeah.
Screw off, statist.
Bruh.
You don't even know what statist is. Next time, I'll show you the real statist. Don't call Cavolo statist. It's an insult to me. I don't want to do anything with these filthy commies.
At least he's not
Thank
pretending
you,
to
Mark.
be libertarian.
You're welcome. Always here to help.
Alright, well, I think it's time to close. Goodbye, audience. We had 0 viewers this whole time, but the vote is...
Not actually.
Oh wait, 1. Oh wow, it's Sap.
One person.
1 person who's already watched the first season. Yay, it's a recurring viewer.
Oh, that's great.
Yes,
that's
nice.
beautiful.
Nice.
Very nice.
So yeah, that's the thing. That's the conclusion. Hello, Sap. Well, until next time, I'm gonna say bye, and we'll see each other next Thursday. I'm gonna stream a bit later next Thursday, so maybe people will watch the VOD. I don't know, or maybe Americans will be up when I stream. Probably. Yeah, the VOD is gonna stay up, so if you wanna just, rewatch the whole thing or, watch what you've missed, it's gonna stay up. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
See you.
See you.